Yesterday saw the announcement of GoPro's Mission 1 cameras, and it's fair to say that the internet has gone pretty nuts over this, and it's pretty easy to see why. These cameras do represent a big upgrade, and the level of excitement that I'm seeing over them is unlike anything I've seen for a very long time indeed. That goes for mirrorless cameras as well, because what we're used to seeing now is minor upgrades year on year, but nothing truly exciting. Now, one reason for this with GoPro's new cameras isn't just the fact that it has a 1-inch sensor and a brand new processor, although that is part of it, and it's not even necessarily the fact that the ILS version of the camera has a micro four thirds mount. There's a lot of interest in the slow motion modes. Now, next to low light performance and better battery life, one of the most requested things on cameras like this is higher frame rates, and it would appear on paper at least that the Mission 1 series offers this in droves. Now, for a few years now, cameras have had 4K at 120 frames per second available on them, and that goes for mirrorless cameras and also the GoPro Hero series, which introduced it on the Hero 10 Black. Now, if you want to go higher than 120 frames a second, you're talking serious money. You need to invest in something like a RED camera, or even go as far as hiring a Phantom. Now, doing that is very pricey indeed, and for the most part is way out of the range of most people's bank accounts. So the fact that the Mission 1 series is appearing to offer 960 frames per second in a 10-second burst in 1080p, as well as continuous recording in 480 frames per second in Full HD as well, and 4K at 240 frames a second, we're talking some serious slow motion capabilities. Now, from what I've been told so far, I believe these to be true HD modes. We're used to seeing high frame rate modes on cameras of the past, but they switched into a very low resolution mode and then kind of upscaled it back into a 1080p container, and the results looked pretty terrible. But for the Mission 1 cameras, my understanding is that this is true high definition and 4K. If that's the case, then if you combine the ILS model with the choice of lenses, for example, you could put a probe lens on it to get some extreme macro shots of insects, and that might also be good for some commercial video as well. If you need a compact camera that's going to go into a small space, the creative possibilities on paper are endless. Now, the one question I do have is whether these modes can utilize GP Log 2. When I had my briefing with GoPro, I did ask the question, and I was told that yes, they could use GP Log 2, which is promising, but obviously I'm going to need to wait and see until the camera is actually available before I can see for certain whether GP Log 2 is available in these slow motion modes. But if it is, and it's 10-bit recording, then we're talking a game changer. And I'm not using that term loosely, because high frame rates like this simply have not been accessible in any sort of high quality way on a camera of this sort of price range. Now, I know I mentioned the price range, and we don't know what the price of this camera is going to be. GoPro is going to be announcing the prices for the Mission 1 series at NAB, which begins this Sunday on the 19th of April. So we'll know very soon how these prices are structured. But I have to say, I'm hopeful that they're going to come in at sub $1,000. My feeling is that maybe the Hero 13 will get a price reduction, and then the Mission 1, which is a base level camera in the Mission 1 series, might take the Hero 13's sort of price bracket, and then maybe we might go up to, I don't know, off the top of my head, $750 for the Mission 1 Pro, and then, I don't know, $850, $950 for the Mission 1 Pro ILS. I'm just pulling figures out of my head or somewhere else if you might want to think that way. The point is that if these cameras do come in at sub $1,000, then we are really talking a game changer. And as I say, That term is bandied about quite a lot and it often means nothing, but I think in this case it does. If the price of the cameras is right, and if those modes can utilize 10-bit GP log 2, and those are the key points. But even if we can't record in 10-bit GP log 2, that sort of frame rate accessibility is still something new to the market. But I do hope that we can get GP log 2 and 10-bit recording in those modes, because that would be absolutely incredible. And looking at GoPro's promotional footage, I'm fairly confident that that is the case, but obviously we won't know for absolute certain until the final cameras arrive. I also think that if these cameras do offer those modes with the full 10-bit color and grading potential of GP log 2, then we are also talking a camera that could be used extensively in higher end work as well. You know, I mentioned before in my previous video about the potential use of the ILS model as a stunt camera, or even the Mission 1 Pro, because it still has the high quality imagery just in the fixed lens form. Either way, you'll be able to put these cameras in situations where you just don't want to risk your normal cinema camera. You'll be able to place them in very compact and restrictive places. And if these slow motion abilities come through, you can only imagine what they'll be like if you, I don't know, set up an explosion somewhere or were doing a car stunt in some way. The kinds of shots you'll be able to get with these cameras should be pretty incredible. Some people in the comments did ask about whether the camera had an HDMI out, and as far as I know, no it doesn't. There is a media mod coming out for it, and maybe that might have HDMI out capabilities, but even if it did, I don't think we should get our hopes up for the ability to output these ultra-high frame rates into, say, a ProRes recorder of some sort. But even without the ability to do that, 10-bit recording in GP log 2 with a 300 megabits per second frame rate is still pretty respectable, especially with HEVC compression. So those are my quick thoughts for today on the Mission 1 series slow motion capabilities. There's been a lot of questions in my previous video on the cameras, so I may do a Q&A video at a later date. I'm going to be following NAB, and if there's anything interesting that comes up there, not just GoPro stuff, but other manufacturers too, then I'll also cover that. But I will be back on Sunday when GoPro hopefully announces the final pricing for these cameras. But anyway, that's it for now. And if you haven't checked out my other video, please do so. And if you do like my content, please do like and subscribe, and hit the notification icon too, and ensure that you get notified of any new content that I put up. And thank you to all of those who watched my previous video and subscribed from it and gave it a like and commented. It's absolutely fantastic to see the response that it got. And I will see you all in the next video.